Welcome to Amy's Romance Stories. If you're new here, comment below where you're watching from, and hit subscribe to join our growing family of Mafia romance story lovers. The chapel in Belluno smelled of old stone and older sins. Mia Wilson stood at an altar that wasn't hers, wearing a white dress that hung off her shoulders like a shroud, and felt the weight of 23 years of powerlessness settle into her bones. The man beside her, Caius Thornwell, had his fingers wrapped around her upper arm, tight enough to bruise, polite enough to pass for guidance. He was signing papers with his free hand, his signature flowing across documents that transferred her like livestock, like property, like something less than human. She couldn't scream, couldn't beg, couldn't tell the board officiant that this was wrong, that she didn't consent, that the British bastard selling her had made his fortune trafficking orphans through legal loopholes and fake guardianships. Her voice had died 12 years ago on a bridge in Venice, and all she had now were her eyes, her hands, and a rage that burned so hot it could melt iron. The chapel doors opened. Every head turned. Mia's breath caught. Alessandro Romano entered like winter itself, all sharp edges and cold precision, his suit cut so perfectly it looked like armor. He was tall, broader than Caius, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. Gray, wolf gray. The kind of eyes that didn't blink when they watched you bleed. He moved through the chapel with the confidence of a man who owned not just the room but the very air inside it. And when his gaze landed on Mia, she felt it like a physical touch. He didn't smile, didn't frown. His face showed nothing at all, and somehow that was worse than hatred. "Miss Wilson," he said, his voice deep and accented, Italian silk wrapped around English words. "How fortunate that you could make our appointment." Mia lunged forward, hands reaching for the marriage certificate on the altar. She'd rip it, destroy it, eat the damn thing if she had to. But Caius yanked her back hard enough that she stumbled. Alessandro watched this exchange with the mild interest of someone observing a bird in a cage. "Spirited," he observed. "Caius, you didn't mention she had fire." "The fire will die quickly enough," Caius replied, smoothing his tie. "She's mute as discussed, physically healthy. No family, no connections. No one who'll come looking. The debt is settled, yes?" Alessandro's enforcer, a granite slab of a man named Lysander, stepped forward with a metal briefcase. The sound of it opening echoed in the chapel. Mia caught a glimpse of more cash than she'd seen in her life, stacked in neat bundles. She was worth exactly 50,000 euros, apparently, the price of a decent car. The ceremony lasted 3 minutes. Mia didn't say "I do" because she couldn't. The officiant, paid enough not to care, declared them bound by law. Alessandro slipped a ring onto her finger, cold platinum against her skin, and she tried to bite him. He pulled back just fast enough, and for a fraction of a second, something flickered in those dead eyes. Amusement? Maybe? Or curiosity? Obedience or pain? He said quietly, leaning close enough that only she could hear. "Choose wisely, little bird. I've broken things far less fragile than you." She spat at his feet. Caius backhanded her so fast she didn't see it coming. The world tilted, her cheek exploding in pain. When her vision cleared, Alessandro had Caius by the throat, lifted half off his feet, slamming him against the altar. "You've been paid," Alessandro said, his voice still calm, still empty. "Touch what's mine again, and I'll send you back to London in pieces small enough to mail." He released Caius, who crumpled, gasping. Alessandro turned to Mia, adjusting his cufflinks. "Come, wife, we're leaving." The drive to the Romano estate wound through mountain roads, mist clinging to the peaks like ghosts. Mia sat in the back of a black Mercedes, Alessandro beside her, Lysander driving. She stared out the window, mind racing. The door locks were controlled from the front. Child safety locks. She was trapped in a car with a man whose reputation preceded him like a funeral procession. Il lupo silenzioso. The silent wolf. The Romano family's underboss. The man who handled their wet work, their enforcement, their wholesale slaughter when negotiations failed. "You'll have your own room," Alessandro said, not looking at her. "You'll be fed, clothed, kept comfortable. In exchange, you'll be seen at my side when required. You'll behave. You'll learn your place in my world." He finally turned to face her. "Do we have an understanding?" Mia stared at him, memorizing every detail of his face, the sharp jawline, the slight scar through his left eyebrow, the absolute absence of warmth, and his eyes. Those terrible gray eyes that made something in her hindbrain scream danger, run, hide. She'd seen eyes like that before, in dreams, in nightmares, in the fractured memories she couldn't quite grasp. She looked away first, hating herself for it. The Romano estate rose from the hillside like a fortress, all stone walls and iron gates, security cameras tracking their approach. As they pulled through the entrance, a man bounded down the front steps, younger than Alessandro, startlingly handsome with an easy smile that seemed alien in this place. "Brother," he called out, opening Mia's door before Lysander could. "Let me see the bride everyone's whispering about." This was Severin Romano, she realized, the consigliere, the charming one. He took her hand, kissing her knuckles in a gesture so smooth it had to be rehearsed. "Severin," Alessandro said, a note of warning in his voice. "Relax, I'm being welcoming. Someone has to teach you manners." Severin winked at Mia. "Has he smiled yet?" "No." "You'll get used to it. Our brother smiles more at funerals. I've seen corpses with more warmth." "Enough. See? Charming as a snake." But as Severin stepped back, as Alessandro turned toward the house, Severin leaned close to Mia and whispered, "Does she know?" Alessandro stopped walking. "Know what?" Severin's smile never wavered. "That you're impossible to live with." "What else?" But his eyes told a different story, dancing with secrets. They led her through halls lined with dark wood and darker paintings, ancestors staring down with the same cold eyes Alessandro possessed. Her room was larger than any place she'd ever lived, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the mountains, a bed big enough for 4 people, and a bathroom of pure white marble. It was a gilded cage, beautiful and suffocating. Alessandro stood in the doorway. "Dinner is at 8. Someone will come for you." "And if I don't want dinner," she wrote quickly on her phone, shoving the screen at him. He read it without expression. "Then you'll go hungry. I don't force women to eat. I'm not a monster, regardless of what you've heard." The door closed. The lock clicked from the outside. Mia waited exactly 30 seconds before she started searching for escape routes. The windows didn't open far enough for a body to fit through. The door was solid oak. The bathroom had a small window, but it was a 3-story drop to flagstones. She was inventorying potential weapons, a letter opener, a heavy bookend, a lamp, when the panic attack hit. It came from nowhere, and everywhere, at once. Her chest tightened, her vision tunneled, her hands shook so violently she had to grip the edge of the dresser to stay upright. The nightmare flashed behind her eyes, the one she'd had since she was 8 years old. Venice. Water lapping against stone. A gunshot that echoed forever. A man falling. And eyes, gray as winter storms, staring right at her before she ran until her lungs burned and her voice died in her throat. And she became the silent thing Caius found shivering in an alley 3 days later. 12 years of that nightmare. 12 years of those eyes hunting her through sleep. And now she was married to a man with the exact same eyes. Coincidence, she told herself. Just coincidence. Lots of people had gray eyes. It didn't mean anything. She didn't believe herself. 3 days later, Mia had explored every inch of her prison. The estate was massive, filled with men in expensive suits who carried expensive guns, all of them watching her with curiosity or contempt, or occasionally pity. She'd refused every meal brought to her room, refused to acknowledge Alessandro when he checked on her with that infuriating calm, refused to participate in whatever sick game this was. On the fourth day, hunger won. She ventured downstairs, following the smell of coffee, and found Alessandro's study. The door was open. Inside, maps covered one wall, marked with red pins and notations in Italian. Photographs of men, some with red X marks drawn across their faces. Filing cabinets that probably contained enough evidence to dismantle half of Italy's criminal infrastructure. And books. Hundreds of them, lining floor-to-ceiling shelves. She couldn't help herself. She stepped inside. Alessandro sat behind a massive desk, reading something on his laptop, a glass of whiskey at his elbow, even though it wasn't yet noon. He looked up when she entered, and she froze, ready to bolt. But he simply watched as she gravitated toward the bookshelves, running her fingers along the spines. Dante, Machiavelli, Bulgakov, Dumas. She pulled out The Count of Monte Cristo, the spine cracked from repeated readings. "My favorite," Alessandro said quietly. "A man loses everything, reinvents himself, destroys his enemies. There's poetry in it." Mia carried the book to a leather chair in the corner and sat, curling her legs under her. She opened to the first page, pointedly ignoring him. Silence filled the study. Not uncomfortable? Not yet. She read. He worked. An hour passed. Then 2. At some point, Lysander entered with a tray, espresso, and small pastries, setting it on a side table near Mia without a word. She ignored it at first, but eventually hunger betrayed her. The pastry was still warm, flaky, filled with cream and berries. When she glanced up, Alessandro was watching her. "You're left-handed," he observed. She nodded slowly, wary. He reached over and adjusted the lamp beside her chair, angling it so the light fell better on her page. Such a small gesture. Meaningless, probably. But it was the first kind thing anyone had done for her in months, and she hated how much it affected her. "You can come here whenever you want," he said, returning to his work. "The books are yours to read." Why? She wanted to ask. Why small kindnesses from a man who bought her like furniture? But she had no voice, so she just returned to her book and tried not to think about how his presence made her feel both terrified and, strangely, safe. That afternoon, Alessandro had business in town. Mia was alone in the study, reading, when she noticed a newspaper clipping sticking out from between 2 books. She pulled it free. The paper was yellowed, dated 12 years ago. The headline read, "Killing in Venice. Witness disappears." Below it, a grainy photograph of a bridge at night, police tape, a body covered with a sheet. The article mentioned a child, a girl, blonde, approximately 8 years old, who'd vanished after witnessing a murder. Mia's hands started shaking. She knew that bridge. She'd died on that bridge. At least the part of her that could scream had died there. She shoved the clipping back, her heart hammering. Just a coincidence. Alessandro collected crime articles, probably for business reasons. It didn't mean anything. She almost believed it. That evening, Fiora della Croix arrived like a perfume commercial come to life, all legs and lips and French accent, sweeping into the dining room where Mia was attempting to eat dinner without acknowledging Alessandro at the head of the table. "Alessandro, darling," Fiora purred, draping herself over him like a stole. "You've married a broken mute? How wonderfully charitable of you. Does she at least know how to warm a bed, or is she useless in every way?" Mia's fork clattered against her plate. Every muscle in her body tensed. "Fiora," Alessandro said, his tone bored. You weren't invited. I don't need invitations, darling. We have history. Fiora turned to examine Mia with the interest one might show a bug. She's rather plain, isn't she? I suppose when you can't speak, looks don't matter. No personality to compensate. Mia stood slowly, picked up her wineglass, and with perfect precision, threw the contents directly into Fiora's face. The dining room went silent. Red wine dripped down Fiora's perfect face, ruining her perfect makeup, staining her perfect white blouse. Lysander, standing guard by the door, made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Fiora shrieked, "You little piece of—" "She speaks volumes, Fiora," Alessandro interrupted, and when Mia looked at him, she saw something incredible. He was smirking. Actually smirking, the corners of his mouth turned up in genuine amusement. "You should leave. Now. Before my wife decides wine isn't enough." Fiora fled, heels clicking furiously on marble. When she was gone, Alessandro lifted his own wineglass toward Mia in a small salute. "Well done. She's been insufferable for years. I've wanted to do that myself." Mia sat back down, her hands still shaking with adrenaline. She grabbed her phone. "Why didn't you let her stay? She clearly wants you back." Alessandro read the message, his expression returning to neutral. "Fiora wants power, not me. And I have no interest in women who perform their affection for an audience." He paused. "You, however, are genuine in your hatred. I find that refreshing." She typed again. "I'm not your entertainment." "No," he agreed. "You're my wife. There's a difference." He stood, buttoning his jacket. "I have work tonight. Don't wait up." He left, and Mia sat alone in the too large dining room, feeling confused and angry and something else she couldn't name. She'd expected punishment for the wine incident, expected violence or cruelty or cold indifference. Instead, she'd gotten approval, and she didn't know what to do with that. That night, the nightmare came back worse than ever. She was 8 again, lost in Venice, running from Caius's orphanage, wanting to disappear into the canals and never be found. She'd stopped on a bridge to catch her breath, small and invisible in the darkness. That's when she'd seen them. 2 men, arguing in Italian she barely understood. The younger one, maybe 19, with dark hair and eyes like smoke. The older one, begging, pleading, the gunshot, the body falling, the splash, and then those gray eyes turning, finding her in the shadows. She'd run, run until her lungs burned, run until her throat was raw from screaming, run until the nightmare ended the same way it always did, with her voice dying in her throat, a scream that never made it out. She woke gasping, tangled in silk sheets, her face wet. The room was dark except for moonlight through the windows. She was reaching for the lamp when she heard it. Footsteps in the hallway outside her door. Stopping, hesitating. Then the sound of something sliding down the door. Someone sitting. Mia crept to the door, pressing her ear against the wood. Breathing on the other side. Slow, steady. Alessandro's voice, so quiet she almost missed it. "I know you're awake. I can hear you moving." A long pause. "The nightmares will pass. Eventually. Everything passes." She didn't respond, didn't move. After a moment, he continued. "When I was 19, I did something unforgivable. I see it every time I close my eyes. The fear on his face. The way he begged. I've killed 37 men since then, and I remember every single one. But the first one, he's the one who visits my sleep." His voice was different now, raw in a way she'd never heard. "We're all haunted by something, little bird. You just wear your ghosts more honestly than most." Mia slid down the door on her side, mirroring his position. 2 damaged people, separated by 3 inches of oak. "I won't hurt you," he said. "I know you don't believe me. I wouldn't believe me either." But I need you to know that whatever I am, whatever I've done, you're safe from me." She wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. But she'd seen what he was capable of, even if she couldn't remember where. She pressed her palm against the door. On the other side, after a moment, she heard him do the same. They stayed like that until dawn, two broken people finding comfort in a barrier between them. The next morning, Mia found a book on her nightstand. The Count of Monte Cristo. The same worn copy from the study. A note tucked inside in sharp handwriting. Chapter 42. About hope. She read it. Reread it. Then, making a decision she'd probably regret, she went downstairs to the study. Alessandra was already there, working. She sat in her chair, opened the book, and began to sketch on a notepad she'd found. An hour later, she left the sketch on his desk before returning to her room. It showed a wolf and a small bird, not hunting, not fleeing, just existing in the same space, warily, carefully. When Alessandro found it, he stared at it for a long time. Then he folded it carefully and placed it in his wallet, next to his heart. Week 2 began with gunfire. They were at dinner, the long table set for 12, various Romano associates and their wives making small talk Mia couldn't participate in. Alessandro sat at the head, Severin to his right, Mia to his left. She was picking at her food when Lysander burst in, gun drawn. "We have a breach. North wall, at least 8 hostiles." The windows exploded inward. Glass rained down. Someone screamed. Alessandro moved faster than should be possible, grabbing Mia, pulling her down, covering her body with his as bullets chewed through the dining room. She felt his weight, his heartbeat against her back, his breath in her hair. "Stay down," he ordered. Then he was moving, gun in hand, returning fire with cold precision. Mia watched from under the table as Alessandro became something else, something inhuman in its efficiency. He moved like water, like death, shooting a man between the eyes without blinking, pivoting to put 2 rounds in another's chest. No hesitation, no mercy. And his eyes, God, his eyes in the muzzle flash looked exactly like her nightmare. The attack lasted maybe 3 minutes. When the gunfire stopped, 7 bodies littered the Romano dining room. Alessandro's jacket had a tear, blood seeping through. He'd been hit. He turned to check on Mia, and she saw his face, saw the gun in his hand, saw the bodies, saw those eyes, and something in her mind clicked into place with horrifying clarity. She knew him. She knew those eyes. She knew that stance. She knew the way he held a gun, professional, practiced, like it was part of him. The room spun. Her vision tunneled. She tried to breathe and couldn't. 8 years old, on a bridge, watching a young man with gray eyes execute someone while she hid in shadows. 19-year-old Alessandro in Venice, committing his first kill. The man who stole her voice, standing right in front of her. Mia fainted, the world going black. Her last conscious thought a scream that, 12 years later, still wouldn't come out. Mia woke in Alessandro's bed, which should have terrified her but somehow didn't. A doctor was packing away medical supplies, murmuring something about shock and trauma response. Alessandro stood by the window, his shoulder bandaged, his shirt discarded, and when he turned to look at her, she saw something new in those wolf-gray eyes. Concern, maybe, or recognition. "The attack," he said quietly. "You didn't faint from fear of the gunman. You fainted looking at me." She couldn't meet his gaze. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone, but he was faster, sitting on the edge of the bed close enough that she could smell gunpowder and expensive cologne. "What did you see, little bird? What made you look at me like I'm your personal demon?" "Everything," she wanted to scream. "I saw everything. I've seen you before. You're the monster from my nightmares made flesh." But she had no voice, so she just shook her head. tears streaming down her face without permission. Alessandro's jaw tightened. I need to know if you're in danger, if there's something in your past that connects to my enemies. Dante Ravenna orchestrated that attack. He wants you specifically. Alive. Why? She grabbed her phone with shaking fingers. I don't know. Please, I just need space. He studied her for a long moment, then stood. I'll have Lysander post guards outside your door. You're safe here, Mia. Whatever you're afraid of, whatever you've seen, you're safe with me. The irony nearly broke her. Safe with him. The man who'd killed her childhood and didn't even remember. He left, and she curled into his sheets that smelled like him, and hated herself for finding comfort there. The next week was psychological warfare she waged against herself. Alessandro had saved her during the attack, taken a bullet meant for her, covered her body with his own. He left books outside her door, sent meals she actually liked, gave her space when she needed it. He was patient and careful and almost kind, and it was destroying her because she couldn't reconcile the monster from her nightmares with the man who sat outside her door during thunderstorms because he'd learned she was afraid of them. She started sketching again, obsessively. The bridge in Venice, the young man with the gun, the older man falling, her 8-year-old self, hiding, watching, dying inside. She hid the sketches, but they piled up, evidence of a truth she couldn't speak. On day 9, she made a decision. She went to his study, where he was working late, whiskey glass empty, exhaustion carved into his face. He looked up when she entered, surprised. She sat in her chair, the one he'd designated as hers, and opened her phone. Teach me to shoot. Alessandro blinked. Why? Because I'm tired of being helpless. Because your enemies know my name now. Because I need to know I can protect myself. She paused, then added, because you won't always be there to cover me. Something flickered across his face, almost like pain. All right. Tomorrow, I'll teach you. The gun range was in the estate's basement, soundproofed and professional. Alessandro handed her a Glock, lighter than she expected, and showed her the basics. Stance, grip, sight picture. Then he stood behind her, his chest against her back, his arms bracketing hers, his hands over hers on the weapon. Breathe out slowly, he murmured, his voice in her ear sending shivers down her spine. Squeeze, don't pull. The gun is an extension of your intention. She fired. The recoil shocked through both of them. She'd missed the target completely. Again, he said, and his hands tightened over hers, adjusting her grip. They stood like that, pressed together, his breath warm on her neck, her heart hammering for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. She fired again, closer. Better. You're a fast learner. She fired 6 more rounds, each one more accurate, but she barely noticed the target. All she could feel was him, solid and warm and dangerous behind her. When the magazine was empty, she turned in his arms and suddenly they were face to face, inches apart, his gray eyes searching hers. Mia, he said, and it sounded like a prayer or a confession. She pulled away, shoving the gun at him, fleeing upstairs before she did something catastrophic like kiss the man who'd ruined her life. That night, Lysander brought Alessandro news that changed everything. Mia heard them in the study, voices raised so she crept close to listen. The attack was definitely Dante Ravenna, Lysander was saying, but there's more. Caius didn't sell the girl to settle his own debt. He was paid, specifically, to deliver her to you. 50,000 euros from a shell company traced back to Ravenna territory. Silence. Then Alessandro, his voice strange. Dante wanted me to have her. Why? There's more. Dante's younger brother, Luca Ravenna, was killed 12 years ago in Venice. Execution style. There was a witness, a child, never found. Lysander paused. Boss, the timeline. It matches your first solo job. The one you never talk about. I remember. Alessandro's voice had gone flat. I was 19. The target was a trader selling Romano family secrets. I didn't know his name was Luca Ravenna. And there was a child. A little girl. Blonde. Maybe 8 years old. She saw everything. I tried to find her, but she disappeared. Mia's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sound. Dante's been looking for that witness for 12 years, Lysander continued. 3 months ago, he found her. An orphanage in England, a mute girl named Mia Wilson. He paid Caius to sell her to you specifically. Why? What's his endgame? Psychological torture, I'd guess. Make you care about her, then reveal that you're the reason she can't speak. That you destroyed her childhood. Revenge doesn't have to be quick to be effective. The sound of glass shattering. Alessandro had thrown his whiskey tumbler against the wall. Get out. I need to think. Mia ran, her mind fracturing. He knew. He'd always known there was a child. He'd looked for her. And now, 12 years later, he'd married her without knowing who she was, and Dante had orchestrated the whole thing. She made it to her room before the panic attack hit, full force, drowning her in memories she'd suppressed for over a decade. The bridge, the argument in Italian, the gun. The older man, Luca, begging for his life. The young Alessandro, face hard, eyes empty, pulling the trigger without hesitation, the body falling into the canal. Those gray eyes turning, spotting her in the shadows. Her scream, running, her voice dying in her throat from pure terror, going silent and staying silent for 12 years. Before we go any further, let me just say something to those of you who still haven't subscribed. You've been here for over 20 minutes now. You're clearly invested in Mia and Alessandro's story. You want to know if they survive this, but you can't click one button? Really? The subscribe button is right there. Stop being a ghost viewer. Commit. Subscribe. Or admit you just don't care enough about supporting the channel that gives you free entertainment. She didn't hear Alessandro enter. Didn't know he was there until she felt his hand on her shoulder, and she jerked away so violently she fell off the bed. He stood there, looking down at her, and she saw the exact moment he understood. It was you, he whispered. The child on the bridge. Mia, it was you. She nodded, tears streaming, her whole body shaking. He sank to his knees, right there on her bedroom floor, like his legs had stopped working. I stole your voice. It wasn't a question. 12 years ago, I killed a man in front of a little girl, and I stole her voice. She grabbed her phone, typing through tears. I didn't remember. Not fully. Not until I saw you with the gun during the attack. Then everything came back. The bridge. The gunshot. Your eyes. I've had nightmares about you for 12 years, and I didn't even know it was you. Alessandro made a sound like he'd been shot. Dante knew. He found you, paid Caius, made sure you'd end up with me. His revenge. Making us. He laughed bitterly. Making us what? Care about each other? And then destroying it with the truth. It's brilliant, really. Sophisticated. Much more painful than just killing me. I don't understand, she typed. Why does he want revenge? Luca Ravenna was his younger brother. I didn't know that then. Just knew he was a traitor to my family. I was 19 and trying to prove myself. I followed orders. I killed him. He looked at her, his face ravaged. And I killed you too. The part of you that could speak, that could scream, that could be a normal child. I'm the monster from your nightmares, Mia. I'm exactly what you should fear. She wanted to hate him, wanted to feel righteous fury. But all she felt was grief, for the 8-year-old she'd been, for the 19-year-old he'd been, for the 2 broken people they'd become. Week 4 arrived with autumn storms, the kind that made the old estate creak and groan. Mia and Alessandro had been orbiting each other, careful, painful, neither knowing how to exist with the truth between them. He'd moved out of the main house into the guest wing. She barely ate. They were destroying each other with proximity and distance all at once. The storm hit at midnight. Thunder that sounded like gunshots. Lightning that turned the room white. Mia tried to ride it out, tried to be brave, but when a particularly violent crash shook the windows, she broke. She ran through the dark house to the guest wing, to Alessandro's door, and pounded on it until he opened it, shirtless and alarmed. Mia, what? She pushed past him into his room, shaking. He understood immediately. The storm. You're afraid of storms. She nodded, hugging herself. Another crack of thunder, and she flinched so hard she nearly fell. Alessandro caught her, steadied her, and she made a decision that was probably insane. She climbed into his bed, under his covers, curling into a ball. Mia, he said carefully. You don't have to. She grabbed his wrist, pulled him toward the bed. Stay. Her eyes begged, please just stay. He hesitated, then got in beside her, careful to leave space between them. But when the next thunder hit, she closed that space, pressing against him, and his arms came around her instinctively. They lay like that, her face against his chest, his chin on her head, hearts beating in tandem. I don't deserve this, he whispered. I don't deserve your trust. She pulled back enough to look at him, and the words she'd type could wait because this couldn't. She kissed him. Desperate, clumsy, inevitable. He froze for half a second, then kissed her back like she was air and he was drowning, pulling her closer, one hand in her hair, the other at her waist. It was need and apology and confession all tangled together. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. You've become my gravity, Mia. I don't know how to exist in this world with you in it. You're the best and worst thing that's ever happened to me. She touched his face, traced his jaw, and kissed him again, softer this time, an answer without words. They fell asleep, tangled together, and for one night, the past didn't matter. Morning shattered everything. Lysander burst in without knocking, face grim. Boss, we have a situation. Sister Eularia from the orphanage in England. She's here, dying, poisoned. She's asking for the girl. They found the old nun in the estate's medical room, her skin gray, her breathing labored. When she saw Mia, tears streamed down her weathered face. Child, I tried to warn you, tried to keep you away from this family. What happened? Alessandro demanded. Dante Ravenna. He found me, wanted to know about the night I found Mia. I wouldn't tell him, so he. She coughed, blood on her lips. I don't have long. You need to know the truth. All of it. And she told them. How she'd found 8-year-old Mia wandering Venice, catatonic and mute, 3 days after witnessing a murder. How Mia had been running from Caius's orphanage, from abuse Eularia suspected but couldn't prove. How the trauma of witnessing the killing had stolen her voice completely. How Caius had found them anyway, taken Mia back, and Eularia had tried for years to get her out legally but failed. The man she saw killed, Eularia whispered. She heard his name. Luca. And the killer, she saw his face clearly. When Dante showed her photos months ago, asking if she recognized anyone, she saw Alessandro's photo in the Romano family records. That's how he knew. That's how he connected everything. Alessandro looked like he might vomit. She's known for months that I'm... She didn't tell Dante anything, Eularia interrupted. She pretended not to recognize anyone. But Dante knew she was lying. That's when he set his plan in motion, selling her to you through Caius. The nun reached for Mia's hand. Child, I'm sorry. I couldn't protect you. Sister Eularia died 3 minutes later, and Mia wept over her body, the closest thing to a mother she'd ever had. Here's a question for you. If you were Mia, could you forgive the person who destroyed your childhood, even if you love them? Drop your answer in the comments. And while you're down there, hit subscribe. Seriously, if this story is making you feel things, show some appreciation. The funeral was small, private. Afterward, Alessandro tried to talk to Mia, but she couldn't look at him. Everything was too raw, too complicated. She locked herself in her room and he let her, understanding that some distances couldn't be crossed. That night, a video message arrived on Alessandro's phone. Dante Ravenna, his scarred face filling the screen. "Hello, Alessandro. By now you know the truth, yes? That your little bride is the witness to your first kill. That she's the ghost that's haunted you for 12 years. Poetic, isn't it?" Dante smiled. "I could kill you quickly, but where's the satisfaction? I want you to suffer like I've suffered. I want you to lose something precious, just like you took Luca from me. Come to Venice, Alessandro, the Ponte dei Sospiri, where you killed my brother. Come alone, midnight tomorrow, or I'll burn your entire family to ash, starting with your brother Severin and ending with your mute little bird. Ciao." Alessandro showed the message to Lysander. "It's a trap. Obviously, I'm going anyway. Also obvious." But before Alessandro could plan his suicidal rescue mission, his world exploded again. Lysander found financial records, transfers from Severin's private accounts to offshore companies linked to Dante Ravenna. Hundreds of thousands of euros over 6 months. Severin had been the traitor all along. Alessandro confronted him in the study. Severin didn't even try to deny it. "You were always father's favorite, the heir, the underboss, the golden son. I'm 3 years younger, and I've lived in your shadow my entire life. So you betray our family? Help the man who wants us dead?" Severin shrugged. "Dante promised me control of the Romano operations after you're gone. He gets his revenge, I get your position. Everyone wins. Except you, obviously." "And Mia? She's just collateral damage?" "She was always just bait, brother. Dante's masterpiece, making you fall for your own victim. I have to admit, watching you suffer has been entertaining." Alessandro moved fast, slamming Severin against the wall, forearm across his throat. "Where is she? What have you done?" Severin smiled. "Check her room." Mia was gone. Drugged and taken, Lysander discovered, chloroform traces on her pillows. They'd taken her an hour ago while Alessandro was confronting Severin. And Severin had been the distraction. Alessandro beat his brother within an inch of his life, then locked him in the basement. "If she dies," he promised, "you'll beg for death, and I'll keep you alive for years." Then he armed himself, ignored Lysander's protests, and drove to Venice like a man possessed. The Ponte dei Sospiri, the Bridge of Sighs, was empty at midnight except for 3 figures. Dante Ravenna, Severin, who'd somehow escaped and gotten there first, and Mia, bound and gagged, positioned exactly where 8-year-old her had hidden 12 years ago. Alessandro approached slowly, hands visible, gun holstered. "I'm here. Let her go." "Why would I do that?" Dante asked pleasantly. "This is perfect, full circle. The place you killed Luca, the place you killed her voice, the place you'll watch her die." Severin added, "Nothing personal, Mia. You were just the perfect weapon, the one thing that could break my brother's legendary control." Mia's eyes met Alessandro's across the bridge. She wasn't crying, wasn't shaking. She looked calm, resolved, like she'd made peace with something. Alessandro took another step. "Dante, your brother betrayed our family. He sold our secrets to the Corsicans. He would have gotten dozens of people killed. I was following orders, protecting my family." "And I'm protecting mine," Dante replied, "by erasing yours." starting with the girl who saw too much. He raised his gun, aiming at Mia's head. Alessandro moved, reaching for his own weapon, knowing he was too slow, too far, that he was about to watch the only good thing in his life die. Then Mia made a sound, a broken, hoarse, desperate sound that froze everyone. No. One word. Her first word in 12 years. Raw and painful and beautiful. Everyone stared. Mia worked her jaw, her throat, tears streaming down her face from the effort. No, don't shoot him. Dante's hand wavered, shocked. In that moment of distraction, Alessandro drew and fired, hitting Dante's shoulder. Dante stumbled, his grip on Mia loosening. She twisted, elbowing him hard, and ran, not away, but toward Alessandro. Severin pulled his gun, aiming at Alessandro's back. Mia saw it, grabbed Dante's dropped weapon, and with hands that had learned to shoot just days ago, fired. The bullet caught Severin in the shoulder, spinning him around. Then Lysander arrived with 6 men, tactical precision, and the fight was over in seconds. Dante took 3 more bullets, dead before he hit the ground. Severin, bleeding, was restrained. Alessandro and Mia stood in the center of the bridge, surrounded by bodies and blood and the ghosts of 12 years, and she spoke his name. Alessandro. He fell to his knees in front of her, this brutal man broken completely, and wept. I'm sorry. God, Mia, I'm so sorry. For all of it. For that night. For your voice. For the nightmares. For everything. She touched his face with shaking hands, her voice barely a whisper, each word clearly painful. Not your fault. You were following orders. I was in the wrong place. You were a child. You were barely more. She pulled his head against her stomach, holding him. I forgive you, Alessandro. Now forgive yourself. Severin, being dragged away, spat blood and laughed. You'll never escape what you are, brother. She'll always see the monster. But Mia was looking down at Alessandro with something that wasn't fear. I see you, she whispered. All of you. Monster and man. I choose the man. Listen, we're almost at the end of this story. This is the moment. This is where you decide if you're part of this community or just passing through. Click subscribe. 6 months later, Mia stood in the same Belluno chapel where this nightmare had started. But everything was different. She wore a dress she'd chosen, ivory lace that fit perfectly. Her strawberry blonde hair was loose, the way Alessandro liked it. And when she spoke her vows, her voice was still raspy, still recovering, but clear enough. I was silent for 12 years, she said to the small gathering of people who actually mattered. You gave me a reason to find my voice again. Not because you fixed me, but because you made me want to fight for something. For us. Alessandro, in a black suit that made him look like the dangerous man he was, responded with tears in his eyes. I don't deserve you. I'll never deserve you. But I'll spend every day of my life earning you anyway. They'd annulled the forced marriage months ago. He'd given her freedom, money, her own apartment, no strings attached, and she'd chosen to stay. Chosen to rebuild with him as equals, chosen forgiveness over bitterness. The kiss was soft, tender, witnessed by Lysander and a handful of trusted friends. No family, because Severin was in prison for the rest of his life, and the Romano Empire was being restructured into something less bloody. After the ceremony, they stood on the terrace overlooking the mountains, her hand in his. I love you, she whispered, the words still new and strange in her mouth. Say it again, he requested, pressing his forehead to hers. I love you, Alessandro Romano. Again, I love you. She smiled. Getting tired of silence? Never. I learned to hear you when you couldn't speak. But hearing you now, hearing you choose me with words, it's. He paused, searching for language. It's grace I don't deserve. Then live. Live like you deserve it. Stop punishing yourself. I've forgiven you. Now. Now you have to do the hardest thing. What's that, little bird? Forgive yourself. He kissed her instead of answering, and maybe that was answer enough. The camera panned back, showing them silhouetted against the mountains. Two broken people who'd found wholeness in the wreckage, the wolf and the bird who chose not to fly away. But in the crowd leaving the chapel, unnoticed, a woman watched them. Dark-haired, green-eyed, holding a photograph of young Mia with a couple labeled Wilson Family, 1998. She smiled, cold and calculating. "Enjoy your happiness, little sister," she whispered. "It won't last. The Wilson family always collects its debts." She disappeared into the crowd, leaving questions that would wait for another day, another story, another reckoning. For now, Alessandro and Mia had earned their fragile peace. They'd walked through fire, through betrayal, through the unforgivable truth of their shared past and chosen each other anyway. Not because it was easy, but because some loves are worth fighting for, worth speaking for, worth breaking your silence for. And Mia's voice, rusty but growing stronger every day, whispered into the mountain wind. "I choose you. I choose us. I choose this life." Alessandro held her tighter, knowing that redemption wasn't a destination, but a daily choice. And for the first time in 12 years, his nightmares were quiet. The end. Did the ending satisfy you? And remember, every subscribe helps me create more stories like this. Be part of the community. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.